I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to our series, Pagan Problems. This week we are going to restore the honor of the housewife and the hearthkeeper. First we will examine how this even came to be an issue to start with. Then we will have a brief discussion about the benefits of cultivating the household, no matter what your position in that household is. Whether you're the primary caretaker, whether you're the one who is the breadwinner and you only help out here and there, whether you're a kid and you're helping out your parents, or you're in a roommate situation. There are benefits, and we will get into those. And we will conclude with looking at the more spiritual components of having a well-run home. So let's start at the very beginning about how is this an issue. You would think that for most of us, you walk into a house, it's clean, tidy, it smells good, you have a comfortable atmosphere. Why wouldn't people just automatically appreciate and respect the person who's primarily responsible for it? Well, unfortunately, it is rooted in ideology. And we have to take a little look at feminism. Now, I want to be clear, I am not talking about the feminism that says that women should absolutely have the right to go out and earn their own living and pursue any job that they are qualified to do. I am not talking about the feminism that earned us the right to vote. I'm also not talking about the feminism that say, you know what, if this job is worth X number of dollars to the company, then it should be paying X number of dollars no matter the gender of the person performing the job, as long as they're doing it properly. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about the form of feminism that is still trying to retain power and influence and political leverage long after its ideology has outlived its usefulness. Because the reality is that there is general agreement, at least in Western societies, that men and women should have equal status before the law. We're not carbon copies of each other. We're not completely interchangeable. But nevertheless, we all have value in society. Mission accomplished. You'd think we'd all be pleased. But there are still lingering issues, and these are manufactured issues. And part of it is related to the idea that there are certain schools of thought within feminism that think that anything having to do with the home, housework, cooking, cleaning, laundry, raising children, being married at all, that it's just beneath women's dignity. And I know that sounds brutal and harsh, but that is what is essentially preached. And it's not just that it's being said that, getting married and having children shouldn't be a priority for women. It's saying, why would you want those things at all? I mean, think about that. One of the most basic and fundamental desires that we as women have is to create communities. And so being said, oh, well, you really shouldn't care about relationships or getting married or whether or not you ever have a family because that's just beneath you. That's for lesser creatures. I can't even imagine. I mean, it's a horrible thing. And it doesn't help that for decades and decades, even in my mother's generation, there was this endless lobbying of the idea that a career was somehow the pinnacle of human achievement, and that without a career, you couldn't possibly be fulfilled, or you have wasted your potential and your time on this earth, and you just let the whole side down. That has been the messaging. And no one points out that even the most fulfilling career that uses your talents that you enjoy doing, it's still not a human relationship. It's not going to love you back. It's not going to be there at the end of your life holding your hand saying it's going to be okay and we love you. It's not going to be able to nurture you back. But no one wants to talk about that. And as far as we're bringing up uncomfortable truths of modern society, let's get another truth out of the way. That a lot of this pressure about, deprioritizing the home, of thinking that it's just, not something you want to deal with, that pressure isn't coming from men. That pressure is coming from other women. Because no one rags on women's choices more than other women. You see, apart from the women we genuinely care about, relatives or friends, I'm talking about the people who we have actual relationships with. The general mode of being amongst women is psychological warfare. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it is intense. But this is the feminine method of establishing hierarchy and dominance. See, boys and men, it's, you know, I'll beat you up if you get in my face, and there are other ways that they establish their hierarchy and dominance amongst themselves, but it always seems to hinge on perhaps physical destruction, whereas women, it's always psychological destruction. So you have that. Then you add on to the reality that in general, women tend to be a bit more community oriented, group based, and that makes sense. We literally grow people, and having children and forming a family, that is the foundation for society and community. And so it is our natural instincts to create that. So if we don't have our own children, our friendships become very important to us, or our relationships with other people within the community. Or even for those who are very focused on their careers, it is all about the networking. We are forming our tribe, and when you are forming your tribe, the tendency is to bond and to make alliances with people who are prone to making similar decisions to ourselves. So what is the prevailing trend that most women will expect other women to fall in line with? Well, it's the current dictates of whatever feminism happens to be preaching, and at that moment, it is an absolute hatred of men. It's a denial of the desire to ever have children. It's very pro-abortion. It's really disgusted with the idea of a family, and it's irritation with any suggestion that any kind of homemaking would be in any way related to the woman. And there seems to be a real irrational resentment for even the lightest forms of housework that are necessary for basic sanitation. We live in a pretty twisted place. So that's why the housewife isn't necessarily well thought of. And the idea of hearthkeeping, homemaking, and really focusing on our family circle and making it that oasis of why that is just so constantly run down. There are some very severe cultural pressures, and those pressures are not coming from anyone who has our best interest in mind. Certainly not anyone who cares about whether or not we're having a happy life. So enough on the causes. Let's talk about some of the benefits of cultivating the household. And this is directed genuinely towards everyone. Again, whether no matter what your position within that household, whether, you are, the adults in charge, whether you're the kids who are underage living with your parents, or whether you had to move back home with your parents later on, or, if you're in roommate situations, whatever it is, if you are part of the household, no matter the composition of that household, everyone benefits if things are run well. For starts, there is less stress for everyone. If the house is consistently dirty or consistently overcrowded or is consistently so disorganized that it's a tribulation when just trying to find frequently used items, that will cause stress. And of course, some people are more sensitive to that kind of chaos than others, and so they'll feel the effects of that stress first. And of course, stress takes a toll on the body. It can affect our physical health, and it does. So if you do have a more orderly household, there's going to be kind of a general net benefit. I'm not saying this cures cancer or anything crazy like that. I'm just saying that you're better off. You also have to think about the proper energy flow of the house. And this is especially important for anyone who practices the magical arts, whether it's in witchcraft with a spiritual focus or if it's just practical magic. Either way, you need to get the energies flowing in the right direction. And when your household's in order, the energies of the home will be balanced. You'll have a good barrier that kind of shuts out some of the nasty influences and energies coming at you. It's something that is nurturing to the people who live there, and that's conducive to our magical workings. But if it's disorganized or dirty or whatever else, that actually results in energy getting all tangled up. So when that happens, don't be surprised if you start to have trouble with your spells and rituals. You are not creating the conditions that you're not setting yourself up to success, I'll put it that way. Another benefit for the household, if things are run well, is that a functioning household tends to be a happier household. If you can come home and you know that the house is clean and tidy, and I'm talking about within reasonable standards. If you know that the laundry is regularly done and you know you're not going to have to do some last minute loads, for fear you would have to go naked tomorrow. If you know the pantry is well stocked and you're going to be able to cook decent meals, then the home becomes an oasis and a resting spot and a place you can genuinely recharge. And we can recover from the wear and tear that the rest of the world inflicts on us instead of having to be on guard wherever we go. And this is true whether we're living alone or if we're living with a large family. You've got to think about that. Are you creating an environment that actually is that oasis? Because if it's not an oasis, then quite honestly, things do need to change. Now, for the more spiritual aspects of this, as we all know, there are many deities and even spirits who are specifically tied to the hearth and home. And if they place value on the home to such an extent that they take an active interest, well, shouldn't we? Now, a few gods who are specifically tied with, hearth and home and household issues are Hermes, Njord, and Thor. And there are other gods who I could think of who they don't really preside over household matters, but they're still known to have taken comfort in, domestic bliss. So you might say that even if they're not, in charge of the household, that they are still appreciative of the atmosphere and just the general flow of life when that household is in order. Now, some goddesses associated with the household are Bertha, Brigantia slash Brigid, Frigga, Hestia, Vesta, Lakshmi, Nana, and Pele. And I found 3 primary forms of household spirits, brownies, laras, and penates. And all of this combines into saying, you know what, this home is important. So if they are willing to devote their energies and they are willing to answer you when you call when you are needing help with domestic issues, then it just seems very natural to me that, hey, here's a sign. What goes on domestically does matter. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to the voices of people who say that the home isn't important. Do you want to listen to the social and political talking heads of our age, or are you more interested in what the gods have to say? That might be something worth meditating about. So we have these beings of divine power, and they do think that the home is worth taking care of and having it managed well and cherishing it. So then we gotta turn the mirror on ourselves and ask ourselves, if we're not, taking care of our households in a reasonable fashion. And again, I'm talking about a reasonable fashion, not anything insane or over the top. But if we're not doing what is reasonable and practical, we need to kind of ask ourselves, what's our excuse for that exactly? The home is more than just a place to sleep and a place to throw food in the microwave so that you can gobble up while you're in front of the TV or your phone or your computer or whatever else. It's more than that. Now, there are plenty of people who do reduce where they live to just these very basic functions, and that's their choice to do so. But just because it's their choice, it doesn't follow that that choice is a good idea or that it allows someone to feel rooted and comfortable in their own space. Another issue, particularly for pagans and witches especially, our homes are where our altars are. The home is our temple. And we are the priests and priestesses of that temple. Now, in ancient times, the priests of various gods also had the responsibility of maintaining and cleaning the temple in addition to whatever religious duties that were called for on a particular day. So if even they, they needed to mop the floor and tidy things up and make sure everything was running well, isn't it reasonable to imagine that the same gods those ancient peoples worshipped, that today that they would expect less from their modern day followers? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, of course, if we are worshiping here, we should conduct ourselves accordingly. Now, I understand that a lot of us have been trained to view housekeeping in a bad light, or we're just kind of naturally messy or disorganized. Maybe no one really taught us how. But it would be worthwhile to review where our attitudes about housekeeping really come from. What influences have reinforced that? And do the evils of housekeeping that we might perceive, do they bear any resemblance to reality? Because just because we have an idea in our head, it doesn't necessarily mean that what's actually going on is the same thing. And I have found that when it comes to household and domestic issues, that is particularly true. So working through any emotions we might have about this and making an effort to look at the homes in terms of what's going to make it work well, what makes it pleasant to be here. That might help a lot of us come to a better place when it regards to tending the home and what kind of routines we get ourselves into. And November is a great time to get nesty. We do have Thanksgiving coming up, which is a cultural holiday, at least in this country. And, that is very much focused not just on, the fruits of the harvest, but also on the home and the relationships. That, of all holidays, is about gathering all the relatives together, even the insane ones. So, it's a convenient time to focus in on all this. And we don't have to have our dream home or expensive furnishings or to have every aspect of the house exactly the way we think we need to have it in order for the home to be a cozy and a welcoming place. Think, is it clean? Because if it isn't clean, we can clean it. That's within our power to do. Is there a place for everything, and do we, more or less, have it in its place? Because if it's not, we can work on that. Have we let go of objects that are either A, not useful, and or B, not attractive to us? Well, again, this is something that is within our power to address. And apart from the cost of cleaning supplies, and if someone is really hard up, there are a lot of cleaning supplies available at places like Dollar Tree, super inexpensive, not glamorous, doesn't always smell the best, but it gets the job done, and sometimes that's enough. But apart from that, this really is a no money involved process, and it doesn't even have to be a huge time-consuming process. If you spent 30 minutes a day, picking up this particular area, well, over time that builds up, and then you start to reap the benefits from it. And once we do go through, the initial cleaning and reorganization, and probably followed by a good house cleansing, it's easier to maintain those habits because we've got a fresh, clean slate at that point. And as long as we do maintain it, it will keep the energy flowing, it will keep everything in the house fresh, and that makes our spiritual practices easier as well. For one, we're not going to have the distraction of lingering cobwebs of energy that really ought to be feather dusted away long ago. Now, one last note. When we honor our homes, and when we are maintaining it, when we are cleaning it, when we are doing the cooking and the laundry and everything else, weeding the flower bed, taking care of each other, when we honor our homes and the people within them, that also honors our deities. Where we live should be a place where we wouldn't be embarrassed to greet our gods if they chose to appear in the flesh, knock on the door, and invite themselves in for a cup of tea. And this doesn't mean that our house has to be anything that's grand or amazing. It just needs to be clean, tidy, and have a pleasant atmosphere. It shows respect. Respect for ourselves, respect for our family members or roommates, respect for our deities. And that's really what it is all about. And I think we forget that, part of the art of homemaking has always had this spiritual component, no matter what particular religious persuasion we're talking about. And it's because the whole reason we go out into the world and do all these other things and all these professions, it's so that we can have this home, so we can have our spot where we're comfortable and we can relax, and it's what we work for. So shouldn't we work to making a place where it is that oasis? It's just some food for thought. I hope it's giving you some things to contemplate. If you'd like to continue the discussion, you are very welcome to join us at Blackbird's Brew on our Discord server. There will be a link in the description box below. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave a comment. But that is it for today. I will see you in another video. Bye.